Hi, this is April, back with Love of Writing, and I wanted to talk today about verbs again because I did one short one on kind of dynamic verbs with a couple examples, but I wanted to talk about being verbs versus action verbs, or not even versus, but and. So being verbs are literally verbs that indicate state of being, like is, I have a bunch here, am, is, are, was, were, has, have, will, would, could, should, be, being, can, may, might, shall. There's a bunch of them. So, and they literally just talk about a state of being. Like, he is handsome. She was hungry. And that's typically can be a temporary state, or he is from Mexico. You know, things like that, or a permanent state. So in terms of being verbs versus action verbs, it's not that you should necessarily always replace all being verbs, because there's a place for them. Typically, being verbs are a little more basic. They state something simply and clearly, but in kind of a way that is can be less certain, like the might, like I might want to go, but that's not certain. That's not like I do want to go, or I wish I could go, or I hope to go, or I will go. It's not as certain. It's not always as specific or descriptive. So a lot of writers like to shy away from or limit their being verbs because there's typically a more dynamic way of stating something. So I have a couple examples. So action verbs are anything that really gives you, like we did with somebody walked to the store. That's walked is also an action verb, but you can do even more dynamic ones. Like here's an example of a being verb with an action verb. I'm going to do the short one, the first one. There's lightning in the sky, meaning there is lightning in the sky. So is the being verb in that sentence. There's lightning in the sky. Tells you, okay, you have a sky and you can see some lightning up there. So, but that is typically something that it's very simply stated. It doesn't give you a picture of what that lightning looks like. So that's something that maybe a child would say in your story. There's lightning in the sky. It's stated simply the way a child might. But if a narrator is setting a scene, a storm scene, they might try to use something a bit more dynamic than there's lightning in the sky. They might say, lightning cracked the night sky. So if you think about that, if you think of something, there's two things that are giving you visuals. The night sky, so if you think of a dark sky and you think of cracks, the cracks that break up that night sky, that is a visual, a very powerful visual that is a dynamic action verb versus simply there's lightning in the sky, which could look like anything. It could be one little bolt. It could be, the fingers of bolts, but you don't know. So when you say something like lightning cracked the night sky, you're giving your reader a more dynamic, exciting picture of what that action looks like. Another example, you could say, she scratched his back. Again, that's not a being verb, but it is a verb that is, or you could say she is scratching his back. That makes it, the being verb is scratching, but it also makes it passive, whereas the action is occurring, the action is being received by somebody versus somebody actively originating or being the source of the action. I'll talk about that later. Passive voice and active voice. So to say she is scratching his back, you're seeing somebody maybe scratching somebody's back, okay. But then to say she raked her claws across his back gives you a more dynamic picture of the action. And to say raked, it can sound a little more violent or a little scarier, honestly. And raked her claws, like she's got these long nails instead of just, scratching somebody's back because maybe they have an itch. But to rake their claws against someone's back gives you a very dynamic, vivid visual of something that could be a lot more disturbing. So being verbs, I always try to review my work to minimize them because I want verbs that are more dynamic and more descriptive and more clear to help my reader visualize what I'm seeing for my writing in my scenes. So it really helps your reader when you can at least minimize a little bit the being verbs and jump more into the action verbs so that you can paint that picture better for your reader. Like, we're painters, but we don't paint on canvas. We paint with our words. So use your words to paint the pictures for your readers.